providing more analysis about the most recent updates concerning this economic competition and its ambiguous results. Joining us from Beijing is Mr. Nader Wang Huan, writer and political analyst, and from Kentucky, Mr. Ihsan Al-Khatib, political science professor. Welcome to Think Tank. And we start off with Mr. Huan. Can Beijing leverage Trump's tariffs to solidify its global economic dominance amid rising humanitarian concerns, sir?
Yes. In China, we always see that inside every crisis, there's opportunities, and you must see it and use it. And when the United States initiate the trade war against China before 8 years ago, China is preparing itself against this trade war. And now China is fully prepared to fight to the end and will not give in. And also, China has a lot of advantages in this war.
Okay, Professor Al-Khatib, could Washington's exemptions from tech imports signal a strategic recalibration, or is it ceding ground to China's dual circulation strategy?
Yes, the issue with China is a global issue, not just an American issue. For the longest time, the Europeans, Australians looked at China as an economic issue, not as a military issue and a strategic issue. But then, over time, the Europeans were able to see China the way the U.S. sees it, not just an economic issue, but a military challenge and a strategic issue. And even the Australians, for example, they had an issue with China. China really opened economic warfare on Australia. Why? Because Australia dared to say the COVID issue, we need to investigate it. We need to show, we need to find out what role did China play in this pandemic. And the Chinese government was angry and retaliated massively, overacted. And that shocked the Australians, and then it got them closer to the US. So the issue with China is a huge country, obviously. It's a major power. It's the second biggest economy in the world. It's a major player. I don't think that Trump is eager to do anything to hurt them, actually. What he's looking for is America First policy, and that's the guiding value. I mean, look at how he dealt with the rest of the world, how he dealt with the Europeans. He actually said Europeans are our so-called friends. They are as bad as China. So it's not about China, it's about the US, it's America first. He looks at the world, the trade that happens between the US and the rest of the world, and he says this is not fair to the US. So it's not, I think the Chinese think he's targeting them. He's not. He is not targeting China. He's trying to rearrange the relationship.
Based on your answer, Professor Al-Khatib, how do you read imposing 125% tariffs on a country, which is basically China, in the context of your answer, sir? Of course, China, it's a trade war. Yes, how do you read it?
Reciprocity. There's a baseline of 10%, and then given what the other country does, he matches them, basically. That's what he does. So China discriminates against American products, and the tariff policy of China. I mean, the issue with China is that China was a developing country, it was a poor country at one time, but now it's not a developing country and a poor country. It's a major power. China is not the China of the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. China is a very important player. It's not a poor country. It's not a developing country. It's a rich country. So it can be that the Americans, the West, dealt with them as, okay, well, let's help them develop and reintegrate them into global trade and make them into just another global power. But China it's not a poor country anymore and wants to dominate. And China as a country has border problems like 17 of its neighbors, not only one country or two. I mean, Vietnam, Philippines, all kinds, Japan, all kinds of countries. So China has problems, not the U.S. Between the U.S. and China.
You read that China has a problem? Okay, Mr. Nader Khan, do you want to answer Professor Al-Khatib?
No, not China. China is now has many cards to China. Firstly, China don't want to participate in trade war with the U.S. But if the U.S. insistent to make the war against the China trade war, but China will fight to the end, and also China had, as I said before, has many advantages in this war because China is one of the leading industrialized economies in the world, and China is the biggest country in the world by purchasing power, and China is the most powerful manufacturing economy in the world. There is a economic growth around 5% every year, and China also has hundreds of millions of skilled workers, which they don't have. There's not any other countries have this advantage, and also Chinese people are well known for its strong work spirit, and also China has the technological innovation, and its technological innovation is full of variety. And from we can see from the follower to the leader in this field, and from made in China to created in China. And also, China always holds a principle of openness and win-win cooperation. And China has now become a major trading partner with over 100 and more than 150 countries and regions in the world. And now also China is doing the right thing, which defending free trade and the current international orders, and also defend for the legal right for development for the developing countries.
Perfect, sir. Sir, Mr. Nader, still with you. How might China retaliate tariffs on U.S. goods, reshaping international alliances and trade partnerships in the coming stage, sir? Mr. Nader, did you hear the question?
Can you repeat?
Okay. I was asking you how might China retaliate tariffs on U.S. goods, reshape international or retaliation on tariffs on U.S. goods, reshape international alliances and trade partnerships in the coming stage or in the coming phase?
Now China now want to find a result to find a solution for the trade war conflict, and now the Chinese if the U.S. do the same, China will do the same with him in this trade.
Okay, Professor Al-Khatib, with fears of a humanitarian crisis growing, how does China plan to balance domestic challenges like real estate meltdowns with its global ambitions, sir?
That's the challenge for China. China has a domestic economic problem. China needs the U.S. China needs the rest of the world. Cannot just count on itself to deal with its economic problems. I mean, China is a global power. It's a very important player, but they have to remember he's not picking on China. Trump is not picking a fight with China. The criticism of Trump in the U.S. is that why are you treating our friends, European friends, this way? He's treating the Europeans like everybody else, like China. And they say that you're not supposed to do that. Give the Europeans special treatment. He said, no, I'm going to treat them the way I treat China, the way I treat any other country. It's America first. We're looking for our national interests. And those who complain about change are those who benefit from the status quo.
Professor Al-Khatib, I do not want to interrupt you in this context, but why can't we play it as a win-win situation? China is a country that you always used to trade with the United States. Why don't we keep it as is without tariffs? I understand that you're mentioning that it is China is not a problem, and the problem is the United States and the sake of the United States. This is all he is focusing on, but we also have to take care of other countries. Your narrative, of course, to keep, sir, relations between countries without trade wars or trade frictions.
The idea is that the status quo is favorable. When you want to change a situation, the person who is going to be mad is the person who likes what's going on. If the status quo is good for them, any change is not going to be, they're not going to be happy with. And that's the reality of it. Everybody is screaming uncle because they're not happy with the change because the status quo is favorable to them. And what Trump is saying, reciprocity. I treat you the way you treat me. And I don't think that's unfair to say to others. It's the golden rule, treat others the way you would be treated. And the Chinese got used to a certain way of doing things, and they don't want to adjust. The reality is that there is a new president in the White House, and he has this idea of bringing back manufacturing to the U.S. For decades, this country was deindustrializing. Everybody in the U.S. wanted to go to China because labor is cheaper, and then they bring it back to the U.S. because it's low tariffs. And that is changing under Trump. It's not about China. China is the biggest player, obviously, but it's about Europeans as well. It's about any other country on the planet. And I think Chinese have to, to realize that this man is not against them. Trump is not out to get China. Trump is not out to have a fight with China.
So don't you see at this point that both countries are defying each other? And that China now is making statements that it will not make any kind of they will keep it as it is, and they will keep on fighting a trade war. If Trump wants it like this, so until when is this going to continue, sir? Until they reach a negotiating table?
How come other countries are coming to the table and saying, okay, let's talk about this and try to resolve it? Why is China choosing? I think they're mistakenly taking it as a nationalistic issue, as national pride, as like somebody's trying to bully China. He's not trying to bully China. It's not about China. It's about the U.S. He's doing this with every country on the planet. Therefore, it's not about China. I think China is choosing the wrong fight. This is not about China's pride, China's nationalistic, identity, China's as a nation. It's about the U.S. dealing with the rest of the world. He's saying this is unfair that our products, we have difficulty selling it in your country while you get to sell it in our country and have low tariffs. We're going to treat you the way you treat us. I don't see what is the problem. I mean, if the Chinese want to fight, it's going to be, as you said, it's not going to be a win-win. It's going to be a lose-lose situation. And that's not good for the U.S. and that's not good for China.
Perfect, sir. Mr. Han, is China's Belt and Road Initiative now a counterweight to the United States tariffs, offering developing nations an alternative economic lifeline?
Yes, China is more than 10 years ago. China started the Belt and Road Initiative, which is to strengthen the cooperation between China and the developing countries, as the countries in Latin Americans and African countries, and also the ASEAN countries. And the countries in the East European countries, and this is to find more cooperations with more countries, and also I want to explain that the Chinese, the U.S. The trade between Chinese and the U.S. is balanced, not as what side the U.S. government, because they emphasize only on the good trade, but in the service trade, the U.S. benefit a lot from his trade with China, and as they buy, Chinese people buy a lot of films from the U.S., but the U.S. didn't buy the same amount as the Chinese buy from the U.S. market. So that what China wants is the equal way to solve the trade problem. But we can't only emphasize on what we benefit and don't emphasize others benefit and don't emphasize on what we benefit.
Professor Al-Khatib, as U.S. policies risk alienating allies, could this tariff war accelerate China's rise as the world's leading multilateral advocate? And I know your answer, by the way.
No. I think that the Chinese way they're dealing with it is that he hurt their pride. How dare you deal with China this way? That it's like recalling the days when the West used to humiliate China. And that's not the case at all. I mean, it's just dealing with the rest of the world. In all countries in the world, the same position, come to the table, let's negotiate, let's make a deal. That's the attitude of Trump. But the Chinese are taking it that he's humiliating them or disrespecting them or dishonoring them by doing that. He's not. He's treating them the way he treats any other country in the world. That's number one. Number two, the idea of China is self-interested, just like the U.S. is self-interested. China is not a charitable organization. The U.S. is not a charitable organization. China is seeking its national interest, and the U.S. the same thing. And I don't think that the rest of the world sees China as an angel. Now, it was at one point because he opened the fight with all countries in the world. Yes, China tried to act like this is a bully.
Did he stop, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me, I didn't hear it. The way he suspended
Yes, I get you, sir. I get you.
So that to focus on China, because everybody was willing to come to the table except China. So what he did is, instead of the U.S. being isolated, now it's China's being isolated because he suspended the tariffs against everyone except China, so China can come to the table. And I think this man is not ideological. This man doesn't have any negative feelings toward China or India or any country. He just looks at the world as business opportunities, as let's make a deal, let's sit at the table and see how we can benefit and I can benefit. I think that the Chinese are taking it as a national pride issue, as a leadership in the world issue, and that's not how he sees it. He sees it as a business transaction, as let's make a deal. I want my country to have manufacturing, and the way things were done was unfavorable to us, and it hurt the American worker. Imagine, I mean, that's the strange thing about Trump, is that he's a Republican, but he's talking about the blue-collar workers, the factory workers that have been harmed by this globalization and this low tariffs that made American companies are at fault here because they actually closed factories in the U.S. and went to China to make them cheaper and then bring them back to the U.S. and sell them in the U.S. taking advantage of the cheap tariffs, the low tariffs. So it's not clean hands in the U.S. either, actually. But this guy's a populist. He's not a Republican. He's a populist, and he promised to bring industrialization to the U.S. factories.
Professor Al-Khatib, you did not answer my question. Could this tariff war accelerate China's rise as the world's leading multilateral advocate?
No. The answer is no. Because
I told you I know your answer.
I'm telling you, if there is a country that has problems with all its neighbors, I mean, 17, is it possible it has border problems with 17 neighbors, with Vietnam, with India? There was fights with India at the border, with India, with all these, Vietnam, the Philippines, Korea. They have problems with all their neighbors. I mean, they're growing power. They have achieved great things, but they're perceived as a bully. And some critics say that the Belt and Road project, they get countries to borrow money from them and they trap them in debt crisis. So China is not seen as a benevolent rising power either. The position they took on the Ukraine also alienated Europeans. They basically are supporting Russia in a war against European interests. So I don't think that China would benefit from this.